Welcome to We Time Convo. I'm your host, Liza, and today we are discussing a topic that's literally everywhere. Microplastics, the tiny invaders hiding in your water, your food, even in your favorite lipstick. Joining me today are some of our favorite returning guests, multi-talented teacher and musician, Russ.
Hi.
And Dawn Marie, our resident dating coach who helps filter out red flags and microplastics.
Hi.
And the brilliant Marita, a physics teacher who's here to break down the science without making our brains melt.
Hello. Hopefully not.
Yay. Yay.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Today, we are discussing microplastics. And, I have some guests here with me today that are going to help me understand, or whoever doesn't know about microplastics, understand what exactly it is. So when I hear microplastics, I really just think of little bottles of water for gnomes.
For gnomes.
That's what they make Legos out of, right?
It's just
very important for the mythical characters to be hydrated.
It's just Liza's brain being Liza's brain.
That's a good analogy.
So I'm here to learn. And thank you, Marita, Russ, and Dawn Marie for joining me today, for filling in, for being my Debbies today.
There you go.
Yay.
So Marita.
Yes.
First question is, what are microplastics?
Okay. So the science teacher in me has to tell you what plastic is. And plastics are man-made materials created from chemicals, mostly like fossil fuels, so oil and natural gas, so petroleum-based products. And so microplastics are these tiny plastic particles, the size of a sesame seed or smaller. So they talk about their millimeters to micrometers to nanometers. So they can be as smaller than the thickness of a human hair is about the size of them. And so there are different kinds of microplastics.
Not my hair.
Yeah, not Dawn Marie's
Not
hair.
Dawn Marie's curly hair. No.
More like, this kind of my hair. So basically a millimeter in diameter. So I just think of thinner than a strand of human hair. They come in two types. There's primary microplastics, which are plastics that were made to be that tiny. Like most countries are banning these kinds of microplastics. When you used to buy like body scrubs, they would put microplastics, or like they use like the face wash that it is like, these scrubbing butt beads, right?
Yeah.
Those are plastics that they were manufacturing for that purpose.
What's face wash?
You're a boy. You use one bar of soap everywhere.
So they're small microbeads that were in face scrubs, hygiene products like toothpaste. Toothpaste had microbeads.
Oh, I remember that.
Mm-hmm. So, and then the secondary microplastics are the ones that the larger plastics, like the plastic bottles water bottles that we drink, and all these other plastics like grocery bags or straws, that over time they break down into smaller plastic particles. So that's what microplastics are.
And I also think of it too as like we do stuff with plastic, like back a lot of kids stimming, chewing on pen caps that are plastic, breaking off little pieces of that, cutting boards that are sold that are plastic. Every time your knife's cutting into there's little notches of plastic coming off. When you break off the water bottle, there might be a little plastic bit on right between the rim and that, or the honey sticks that they sell like at farmers markets. When you bite the end of it, like that little piece is the microplastic. Though a lot of people, you're like, oh yeah, whatever, my system's gonna get rid of it. But we're finding out that they're staying in our systems.
Yeah. So there are different types of plastics and they have different properties. So these are like, if you ever look on your plastic bottles or containers, they'll have this like 3-letter code. So I thought I always like wonder what that is. I'm not a chemistry person, so I had to look up the stuff. So there are PET plastics. The word is polyethylene terephthalate. See? So used in water bottles and food containers. Then there's high density PEs, which are found in milk jugs and shampoo bottles. And PVC, I think everybody knows what PVC is, used pipes and vinyl siding. Polystyrene, so foam, like styrofoam is plastic. And then polypropylene, which is used in like yogurt containers and bottle caps. So those are all the different types of plastics that can break down over time into microplastics and get into soil. Usually most people think microplastics think, it's just all in the ocean, but no, it's everywhere. Like we are inhaling microplastics right now.
That's scary.
Yeah.
So,
Yikes.
Yeah. And so there's the biggest concern with microplastics are these environmental issues, impact on the environment with wildlife, also then trickling up to human life, right? Because we eat certain wildlife. So it says there's like, when you mentioned it to me, microplastics, I thought, oh yeah, because I just immediately went to the sea of garbage that circulates in the ocean with the gyres. A gyre is a circulation pattern of the water due to the currents. And so, but it's more than that. They're like,
nerd.
Yeah. I did teach earth science a long time ago. But they like
nerd party.
I just remember when,
No, I didn't see it.
when the cans used to have when the 6-pack have the plastic on it to hold it together.
right. And you were not supposed to
cut them so that it doesn't choke like a turtle's neck or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, we cut them and it will protect like the dolphins, the turtles from getting snagged, but like that'll help further break them down into those microplastics that like the fish that we eat can ingest. So
and we're eating the
fish. So like you've got microplastics in the deep ocean trenches, mountaintops, Arctic ice, rain and snow, air we breathe, food we eat, drinking water, and it's already in our bodies, human blood, organs. It's in our brains now.
So what does it do to
So glad you asked.
of our bodies?
Wow,
Okay,
look at that soft pitch.
The human health concerns, it says that the average person might be consuming about a credit card's worth of plastic every week, according to a 2019 study by University of Newcastle in Australia. So credit card amount, that's a lot. When you think about it. A credit card, that's like, that's 2 by 3 inches, right, of plastic that we have in our bodies.
A decent amount.
Amount, right? The thing about us versus some wildlife, though, is that we probably excrete a whole lot more of it. But the problem, here's the potential health concerns. So it says inflammation and immune system responses, hormone disruption. Big idea is reproductive issues, with what we're going to talk about in another episode, in a future episode about population decline. So damage to organs, potential cancer risk from certain plastic additives. Because remember, we just said plastic is made up of petroleum products. So if you want to be crude about it, just basically we're drinking gasoline.
Yeah.
And what is gasoline made of? Like what is that doing to our body? You wouldn't drink gasoline, right? But we're inhaling it, ingesting it.
Maybe if you were
it
from
smells
the South.
good. It smells good though.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Sorry.
So those are the concerns just to humans. And so the smallest microplastics, which are nano plastics, which is 10 to the minus 9. So itty bitty, we could just barely on the edge of what humans can see. So think of like the tiniest bit of glitter that you've ever noticed on someone's face, right? Like teeny tiny, that's close to a nanoparticle, close to, not totally, because they can cross cell membranes, potentially enter our bloodstream and organs. So the fact that they are so teeny tiny, they can go into our individual cells could be the reason why how like there's a rise, I'm not saying it is, but there's a rise in cancer, right? Because cancer is the fact that cancers are really just the fact that cells don't reproduce normally. Yeah. And you get these cells that have like, they're not the healthy normal cell that they're supposed to be.
They got switched to cancer. But because with increase with cancer rates, cancer clusters, that's a lot to study and see if it's just a general area, what's going on, is something being released in that area, or is it products, right, that we're constantly using now, because there's nothing almost that doesn't come with a plastic wrap. Plastic is constantly, look at all the packaging we're getting from Amazon constantly. You're opening that up, touching it. So it's being more aware.
Another thing that we don't think of that is included in this plastics that I researched last night, paint particles.
Oh yeah.
Right? Anytime paint's like soft, so it says created when surfaces shed paint flakes or are sandblasted. How many times have you like seen people like this, power wash paint that's been on the ground, right? That water, the little particles become microplastics that go down into the storm drain, goes through the storm drain, out into the bay, out into the ocean. So it's not, everyone we think of microplastics, we just think of like water bottles and shopping bags and that kind of stuff.
Like actual physical plastic things. Yeah.
So there are things like paint particles is one of the things I stumbled across in my research. Films, like they're talking about grocery bags, right? And this is nurdles, also known as it sounds weird like I'm saying nurdle, but nurdles, pre-production plastic pellets that are used in our daily lives. And it's during manufacturing, handling, and transportation. These tiny plastics are frequently spilled into the environment. So it's like in the production of the larger plastic items, there's all these like excess plastic that gets put into the environment. I thought it was just kind of interesting. And then there's up to 18 microfibers Those like in our clothes. We got plastic in our clothes.
Oh yeah, that's the next, I think, big wave of people being aware.
You don't think about that.
Right? No, exactly.
How?
So I'm glad you gave me homework.
Yeah.
It's like very informative. Says microfibers originating from clothing.
Are you saying the polyesters aren't natural?
Yeah. That's why it moves so freely. Yeah.
So up to 18 million microfibers may be released from a 13-pound load of synthetic fabric laundry. So when you do your laundry, the synthetic clothes that you wear releases the microplastics in the clothing that we wear into the sewer system, which eventually goes out to the ocean.
And our body can absorb that stuff too, right? Like kind of like deodorant.
Yeah.
Can absorb like.
Well, because now they're worrying about a couple companies that sell leggings. There's a couple companies pivoting and going like, hey, these microplastics and leggings are really close to the female reproductive system. Those microplastics, that chemicals are coming off, that could be harming your.
How do we avoid that? Do we just have to walk around naked? Naked. How do we have to walk around naked, just eating vegetables, being vegan?
100% cotton.
Buy natural fiber.
But those things are expensive, right?
Yes.
But that's the cost of.
But I mean, because they look really cute.
Well, and that's the bigger issue is that we could have a lot sooner than this tackled a lot of our environmental concerns if people were just willing to accept that if we care about our planet, because it's the only one we know that is able to sustain life as we know it now, then we need to be willing to pay the price of what it costs to repair what we've damaged, basically. So yes, it's going to cost us money in order to live more earth friendly, so to speak. Does that make sense? So one more thing that I noticed about these microfibers, right? So I said 18 million microfibers released from a 13-pound load of laundry. It says one study reported 5.6 million tons of synthetic microfibers have been released just from laundering from 1950 to 2016. And half of this amount was emitted in the last 10 years. So like of that amount, more than about 3 million tons of it has been the last 10 years because we've been moving towards these more micro, like they call it microfiber mesh, all those like jerseys, athletic jerseys, anything that's nylon is a plastic.
And then also washing, right, if you use pods, those are plastics, anything.
Oh, people eat those now. The Tide Pods.
Yeah.
Remember that, Chris?
Kids,
don't do that.
But that's in your laundry.
Maybe that's due to population decline as well.
Yes. Yeah, okay. And then even dishwashers, the tabs, they're covered in plastic. Those are being put into on our plates.
Our dishes.
Yeah. So it's not just one avenue, it's saturated the whole market for everything that we do throughout the day.
Well, we could, in the 70s, they figured out like the ozone layer was shrinking. Mm-hmm. Scientists calculated the ozone layer was shrinking. And then they found why. They found that it was chlorofluorocarbons. The stuff that made Aquanet work.
Oh no! And held up your hair.
Yeah, the stuff that was used to pressurize those is a chlorofluorocarbon, and so globally they outlawed the production and use of chlorofluorocarbons, and in fact that worked. That stabilized the ozone, and now there's not a problem.
And now everyone just has really soft hair.
Well, there's still, you can still get Aquanet. It just doesn't have chlorofluorocarbons in it. Like it doesn't, WD-40 doesn't use that. They use something else.
Doesn't turn your hair into a wall.
They use something else to pressurize those cans, but it's not. Yeah. So they found the solution to the problem. And so the problem with plastics is plastics are a byproduct of oil and petroleum production. So when you get oil and make gas, you're left with all kinds of junk, and that stuff is what you make plastic out of. And the petroleum industry needs to get rid of all that stuff somehow. And so they came up with this beautiful side business, let's make the 5 or 6 different kinds of stuff. And there's lots of great uses for plastics. There's lots of things that really would be very difficult to do without plastics. Mm-hmm. I had a buddy who was a plastic mold injection engineer, and he said you could engineer a mold to make 2 different twists for threading IV connections, which is very hard to do with glass. Very hard to do with other materials, but plastic, you heat it up, you blow it into the mold, and it, makes a pretty clean connection. So plastic is useful in many ways, but it's absolutely unnecessary in other ways. And so there's always cost with change, and there's cost with choice, but we have to consider the cost of what we don't have some other place to go. This is the only Earth. This is the only livable planet that we're confident in right now. And so no matter what the costs are, it will not be cheaper to leave.
Yeah.
It will be cheaper to come up with solutions to the problems that we've had and fix the damage we've done long term than it will be to pretend we're going to get to Mars and make something useful of it, because the atmosphere still kind of sucks on Mars, right? No matter what.
Yeah, we haven't nailed that one yet. So we haven't even.
It's a one-way trip right now at best.
Yes,
and that's scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we're still 100 years away from any sort of human habitation of Mars. So, where
the crew doesn't die. Yeah.
Right. Where, this whole idea, look what happened with let's just send billionaires to space. I mean,
we should try that though.
Can we send a couple of them? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I digress. I do want to go back to what Russ was saying about the ozone. So for people who don't know, why do we care about the ozone layer? The ozone layer is a part of the atmosphere. It's the lower part of the stratosphere where it protects us from harmful radiation. So the sun puts out light in all wavelengths. So radio waves all the way to what's called gamma radiation. Radio waves are typically what we use with broadcast communications. Gamma radiation is used in nuclear bombs, can be used in chemotherapy or radiation therapy for cancer patients. So we don't want all of those gamma rays hitting our planet. That's one of the.
No, I don't want that.
The ozone layer is what scientists believe protected early life on our planet from that exposure, which allowed more complex multicellular life to evolve. So the ozone layer is a protective layer, and that's why it's so important to us.
So what happened with it, because we stopped using CFCs, it regenerated?
Yes, because it was preventing the ozone molecules from forming. So instead of 3 molecules of oxygen bonding together, the oxygen molecule would bond with the hydrofluorocarbons. So.
Oh my God.
Solid. Man, I'm glad I brought that example. Yay.
So
I'm on the science team. Yay.
Can the ozone layer does it repair? Can it repair? Or once it's damaged, that's it?
Remember when I taught earth science that we said that that has been repaired. It's fixing itself over time, right? Because we're still
Can it be repaired with plastic?
No. That is not the solution.
That would be
Okay. Wait, what we're trying to do is make sure that we can allow the oxygen because the Earth's atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, oxygen. I forget the percentages. And I'll probably flip-flop them. I think it's 70-28, 70-30.
Yeah.
And I think it's mostly nitrogen and not oxygen. So there's a limited amount of oxygen. So we can free up more oxygen here, right? Which is when we, inhale the respiration between plants and animals, that helps free up oxygen. So that helps. But then, when we get rid of the plants, then we reduce the amount of oxygen, right? There's it's all connected together, right? This whole global warming, the ozone layer,
everything.
Right. So, and then with these, go back to bring it back to microplastics. So then if microplastics are harming the wildlife, right, and the plant life, then that's going to impact the global environment. It's going to impact our atmosphere. It's going to impact our ability to sustain the diversity of life that's here on our planet. And I think the thing is, our planet's still going to be here. Is there going to be life on this planet? And what kind of life are we going to have? Is it going to be back to microbes? And I think that's what the humans should care about, is that, the complex life forms are what we're trying to preserve.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of understanding about ecosystems, but we don't often see the Earth as a series of ecosystems, which we are a part of. We see, like, we always hear the story, well, at least I've heard the story many times about, oh, if you take a predator or a group of apex predators out of a system, what happens? Well, if you take the wolves out, then the deer multiply. And when the deer multiply, they eat all the grass. And when they eat all the grass, then there isn't enough for the little animals and so forth. And so the like, you have to have predators in the system to control the population below them. And
it's the circle of life.
It is the circle of life. And so if we don't see ourselves as like players, and like we often view ourselves as observers rather than like victims, rather than volunteers in the circle of life story. Like, we don't have to make plastics. We don't have to make this kind of plastics. We don't have to make it cheap. We don't have to make it easy. We could tax, we could do all kinds of things. We could incentivize. There's lots of ways to influence change. And to say, to pretend it's not happening is terrifying.
Yeah.
And to not be thinking of like lots of different ways to solve this, because lots of things have to be done. Like, you know, the big lie right now, as I understand it, is that recycling is doable, because it's not. It's not money making. It's not happening. It's not working. Mm-hmm. And so until the manufacturer is responsible for the product, like, we don't have accountability. Like, you can't dump it in the ocean and say, yeah, that's a problem. The trash is there. Like, until there's accountability. And so, like, I like the CFC story, because that was like both science and the global community and businesses, like, we all got on board there. And so we're at a different time now, but we can't wait for industry to regulate itself. It won't. That's like, business's job is to make money. Mm-hmm. And so, like, government's job is to regulate them. And there's a couple ways to do it, right? And unfortunately, they're the easy way and the hard way. And the easy way is not going to be open, right? So we're going to have to we're going to have to demand this, like, and there's lots of ways to do that. But as consumers, like, we have to think, like, is this what I'm paying for? So suggestions are, look for businesses that use alternative packaging, compostable products. They're out there, they're available. Lots of businesses are selling stuff that is not single use and plastic. Lots of places out here like have hemp based products and compostable products. So it's available. It isn't as cheap, but like,
now what cost
does the plastic have, right? We don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, they are developing. There are solutions to the microplastic problem, and so I have some ideas about what's going on. So these are some of the things that they're working on. There's things like removal of the microplastics, and then how we can reduce the amounts. So one of the things is researchers are developing filter systems for wastewater treatment plants that can capture microplastics before they enter the waterways, like rivers and oceans. They have ocean cleanup technologies like floating barriers and collection devices that are designed to capture plastic waste, including microplastics, from ocean waters. This one, I'm not sure how this works, because the physics nerd is in me. It says magnetic removal. So certain materials are able to respond to a magnetic field. So it says some scientists are working on methods to attach magnetic particles to microplastics in water, making them easier to remove. So continue to make these plastics, but put like ferromagnetic materials, which means they'll respond, so that you can just, you know, like, you can take a big magnet. That's interesting, because, you know.
But what if we consume that?
Well, that's the interesting part. Well, that's the interesting part. And then microorganisms, certain bacteria and fungi can potentially break down some types of plastics. Researchers have discovered a bacteria called Ideonella cycanaceus, and they can eat the PET pipe of plastic.
It's flesh eating.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, mushrooms are pretty big thing right now for,
like, psychedelic mushrooms.
No.
My bad.
Yes.
Those are
different question.
Yeah.
Different question.
Different question.
How much microplastics are in psychedelic mushrooms?
Oh, that would be another thing.
That's right.
But then the reduction strategies, like Russ was mentioning, biodegradable plastics made from plant materials like corn, starch, mushrooms, and algae. I did do a little bit more research on bioplastics though. So keep in mind, these are still a form of plastic and they'll still break down. You're not just using petroleum products. They're still going to cause the same problem of being microplastics, but at least you're not using petroleum products. And so like all petroleum based products. So there's arguments about whether they're a really good alternative or not. I think the ideal is that that's less fossil fuels being put into the environment. And in addition to the sort of microplastic issue is more fossil fuels in the environment means that our greenhouse layer gets thicker, which means that the Earth's planet's temperature rises. That's a fact. It really irritates. I'm going to get really...
Marita.
The whole people that say that global warming, global climate change is not a thing. It's a thing. There is exact factual evidence, data you can see that they've tracked the Earth's sea surface temperature, and over the last 200 years, it's risen by about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. And that is non-natural warming. Yes, the Earth naturally warms and cools on its own, but this is a man-made aspect. What the scientists are arguing about is projections about the implications of these changes. But when in the 90s, what the scientists were saying was going to happen, we're seeing today loss of the coral reef, which is a diverse bioecosystem that we can't lose that. That's important. I mean, those are things that are important. Anyway, so I went off my soapbox. Biodegradable alternatives, banning plastics, improving recycling technologies, and then it says, which is new methods being developed to recycle more types of plastics. So what Russ was talking about, you're right. Like they make us sort our material, but they can't recycle all of those plastics. Aluminum metals are easier to recycle.
Glass is nearly entirely recyclable.
Right? And so, which is why I personally made a choice 2 years ago that I am no longer buying I love soda. So that's my device. Okay. I'm no longer buying the plastic liter bottles of soda when I don't have to. So I pay more for buying the canned sodas. And then when I go to when we're on road trips, is probably the only time I ever buy the plastic bottle ones, because that's all they sell most of the time. I have seen them do cans, but that's the chance that I'm going to spill soda in my car is more likely. Yeah. So, but doing something like that. The other thing we could do is before plastics were invented, people used cloth bags. People, we weren't discarding the bags that we went shopping with. We made them and then took them, sacks is what they call them. Right? So paper is also another alternative to go paper, though that goes to the trees, but at the same time, I don't know.
So is that why we started charging for plastic bags?
Yes, that is
just to kind of save the environment.
Incentive to say what would you like a bag? Now they're charging for both plastic or paper because they really want to encourage you to reusable, like not reusable, like stuff that's not going to break down. So, stores will sell their plastic bags.
Apparently the Trader Joe's bag was really popular. People got in line before.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
What really we should be using is natural bags made of cotton. We should go back to Little House on the Prairie, little gunny sack that we buy our groceries with. I'm not kidding. If you want to protect, do your part, those are the ways that you can do. Oh, and then so what you can do, avoid single-use plastics like straws, bags, and bottles. Choose natural fiber clothing over synthetic. Use personal care products without microbeads, but I think nowadays that's less. Properly dispose of all plastic waste. Support brands and policies that aim to reduce plastic use, and participate in beach or community cleanups. It says microplastic problem is serious, but there's reason for hope. Awareness is growing, like this episode. Technologies are advancing, and both individuals and governments are taking action. By understanding the issue and making informed choices, we can all reduce plastic pollution and protect our planet's health. And I think that's the big issue, is when we say global warming, global climate change, and pollution, let's talk about it's planet's health. Would you do that to your body? Would you put all this? I mean, we inadvertently do. Right? But you wouldn't on purpose do those kinds of things. Well, okay, Russ is disagreeing. Anyways, that was my homework.
That was very informative. I mean, you guys, you should watch Fern Gully. Do you remember that movie, Fern Gully?
Fern Gully.
Yes.
I never saw it, but
oh my gosh,
little dinosaurs.
Yes. Protect the environment and just how important our Earth is. I want to say Kevin Bacon voices Fern Gully. I don't know if it's from the 90s. Yeah. Russ remembers it. I talk about it. People think that I'm on something. I remember
the movie. I never saw it though.
Yeah. Yeah, so
maybe.
But you're a lot younger than me, so you probably.
But you guys, yeah. I mean, we only, like what Marita said, we have one home, one earth.
We can fix it.
There's still hope.
A lot of stuff to do.
There's still hope.
One person can make a difference, because if you make a choice today to not use plastic bottles, to not go buy those products, everyone makes a choice to do one thing. And, you know, we're at like 9 billion people. Then that's 9 billion plastic products that won't be used or need to be created.
Yeah.
Right.
And then also us looking and asking industries not to use plastic to create something else, and to look at that and support them and those companies, because that's where money rules the world.
And then maybe plastics are restricted use for things like medical devices, that they're life saving. They're important for that. We cannot get rid of plastics altogether. But we're talking about the stuff that the disposable,
single-use disposable
is what we're talking about.
The Nespresso ones, the coffee pods.
Yeah, that's another.
Yeah.
Crystal Geyser isn't a water bottling company. They're a plastic bottle manufacturer.
Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah. And you're keeping this stuff out of your body as well, which is harmful. And you said it causes cancer.
Yeah.
It can cause cancer. And Dawn Marie, you said earlier there's
going to be more research
Parkinson's,
about Parkinson's, more coming out with reproductive.
Don't you feel like there's lots more people complaining about migraines?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And if that's getting your bloodstream, it's getting into your brain's trying to process all these harmful chemicals. I mean, I'm not a doctor.
Early menstrual cycles, like it can
early menopause.
Early menopause. So lots of things, guys. So
it's real. It's happening. It's happening to me.
Yeah, save 10 cents.
Russ is an ally.
I'm just going to say empty head means no migraine.
Yeah.
Try it.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I've learned so much. And I hope everyone out there just, pick up a reusable bottle and keep it forever.
Or the thermos, the ones that are made out of metal.
Yeah.
There you go.